Distinguished delegates, I call to order the 11th meeting of the 55th session of the Commission for Social Development. The documentation for this meeting is listed in today's journal. Distinguished delegates, first I would like to thank all of you for your understanding in the scheduling and rescheduling of this meeting, which we had to rearrange according to the snow day yesterday, which closed headquarters, which caused trouble with translation of documents and many other issues. I have personally been in contact with the Secretariat continuously over the last 2 days, and also with the other members of the Bureau to see how we can bring this session of the Commission to a good conclusion. So now the Commission will proceed to hear the introduction of 2 draft resolutions and to take action on all draft proposals before it. And with regard to the introduction of draft resolutions, I would like to remind delegations of the practice of the Commission whereby draft resolutions submitted by the Bureau are not introduced. But before we go there, I would like to hand the floor to the Secretariat to inform you. Okay. I see first the Democratic Republic of Congo. You wanted the floor? Is this a point of order? Or no? Then please. Okay. So I now give the floor to the Secretariat to inform you about the status of the resolutions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, please allow me also to apologize to the delegations for the delay in the start of this afternoon's meeting. As you have succinctly pointed out, due to the closure of UN headquarters yesterday, the processing of the draft resolutions was delayed. We have been coordinating closely with Docs Control yesterday and today. Draft resolution L3 was issued earlier today. It is now available in all languages. Draft resolution L4 on policies and programs involving youth and L5 social dimensions of NEPAD are still being processed. We anticipate that they will be released in all languages a little later this afternoon, approximately around 5 p.m., which is why the meeting has been rescheduled from 4 to 7 so that we are able to conclude the final meeting of this commission with full interpretation services. Again, I thank you for your understanding, and we are doing our best to make sure that all documentation is available to you as soon as possible. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
I thank the Secretary of the Commission for her statement. In view of the status of the documents, I suggest that we proceed as follows. We will take action on draft proposal L3, Resolution on Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is available in all the languages and which was made available online a few hours ago. I will then suspend the meeting until 5 p.m., by which time, hopefully, we will have the other 2 draft resolutions, and we can then proceed with action on those resolutions and the rest of our business. I hope this is agreeable to delegations. Okay, if I hear no objections, we'll continue in this manner. I would also like to point out that since all the draft resolutions before the commissions have only been circulated today or are only going to be circulated a little later, it would be necessary to waive the relevant provision of Rule 52 of the Rules of Procedure of the Functional Commissions of the Council, which reads as follows, I quote, "Unless the Commission decides otherwise, proposals and substantive amendments shall be discussed or put to the vote no earlier than 24 hours after copies have been circulated to all members," unquote. Are there any comments on this proposal? I hear none. Since there are no objections, I take it that the Commission agrees with this proposal. It is so decided. I now invite the Commission to resume its consideration of agenda sub-item 3B, entitled review of relevant United Nations plans and programs of action pertaining to the situation of social groups, and to take action on draft resolution E/CN5/2017/L3 entitled Promoting the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and Strengthening the Mainstreaming of Disability in the Implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as submitted by me in my capacity as the Chair of the Commission. The negotiations on this draft resolution were facilitated by my colleague, Mr. Murat Mahidi of Austria, and I wish to thank him very much for his hard work and his great efforts in reaching the successful conclusion of these negotiations, and I thank all of you for your very constructive engagement on this resolution. I thereby now invite the Commission to take action on draft resolution L3. I have been advised that the draft resolution contains no program budget implications. Does any delegation wish to make a statement in connection with the draft resolution before adoption? I see none. May I take it then that the Commission wishes to adopt the draft resolution and recommend it to the Economic and Social Council for its adoption? I hear no objection. It is so decided. Does any delegation wish to make a statement after the adoption of this draft resolution? I see none. So I thank you for this. Distinguished delegates, the 11th meeting of the Commission for Social Development is resumed. Apologies for the delay. You have before you now the draft resolution L4. It has been distributed in the room in all languages. Still waiting for the final versions in all languages of L5. I therefore invite the Commission to turn its attention to the draft resolution entitled Policies and Programs Involving Youth, contained in the document E/CN5/2017/L4, which has just been distributed. I now give the floor to the representative of Portugal to introduce the draft resolution on behalf of the sponsors listed in the document.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Republic of Moldova, Senegal, and my own delegation, Portugal, it is an honor to introduce the resolution on policies and programs involving youth. At the introduction, several other delegations joined the original co-sponsors: Albania, Algeria, Andorra, Austria, Bangladesh, Belgium, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Botswana, Bulgaria, Burkina Faso, Burundi, Cabo Verde, Colombia, Congo, Costa Rica, Croatia, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Djibouti, Eritrea, Estonia, France, Georgia, Greece, Italy, Jamaica, Kenya, Latvia, Luxembourg, Madagascar, Mali, Malta, Montenegro, Morocco, Namibia, the Netherlands, Peru, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Sri Lanka, Sweden, Togo, Tunisia, Turkey, Uganda, Ukraine, and Zambia. Madam Chair, Mr. Chair, before introducing the text under consideration, I would like to make the following edits. On OP4, the word "and" should be replaced by the word "or," reading as follows: encourages member states to develop comprehensive policies, programs, and action plans focused on the best interests of youth, particularly the poor and those who are vulnerable or marginalized, and to address all aspects of youth development in line with the World Programme of Action for Youth, and to realize the opportunity of the demographic dividend offered by the largest number of young people ever in the history of humankind. On OP5, the comma after the expression gender equality should be replaced by the word and, reading. Calls upon member states to promote gender equality and the empowerment of young women and girls and the full realization of all human rights on equal footing with men and boys. Mr. Chair, 1 year after the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the international community needs to have a clear picture of achievements and shortcomings of ongoing policies and programs related to young people in order to more effectively address the challenges hindering the youth development. The main sponsors decided to focus on reaffirming the importance of implementing the YPA, has a comprehensive policy framework and political guidance for member states in designing and implementing policies aiming at improving the situation of young people in line with the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We strongly believe that serious challenges faced by young population will only be overcome with cross-sectorial, comprehensive and long-term youth policies, and hence the resolution urges member states to ensure that youth issues are adequately addressed in the implementation, follow-up and review of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Furthermore, the resolution recognizes that the implementation of the World Programme of Action for Youth and the achievement of all the international agreed development goals, in particular the Sustainable Development Goals, require the full and effective participation of youth, youth-led and youth-focused organizations. We also request the Secretary-General to submit to the Commission for Social Development at its 57th session a comprehensive report on the implementation of the resolution, including progress on the achievements and challenges in the implementation of the World Programme of Action for Youth, in consultation with Member States as well as with the relevant specialized agencies, funds and programs, and regional commissions. Mr. Chair, finally, we would like to thank all delegations involved, in particular youth delegates that participated in the consultations, as well as the UN Secretariat, for their support, for their constructive engagement along the process, and for the necessary flexibility that allowed us to arrive at the comprehensive consensus resolution we have before us today that we hope will be adopted by consensus. I thank you.
Thank the distinguished representative of Portugal for her statement and for introducing the draft resolution L4. Does any other delegation wish to co-sponsor the draft resolution as orally revised? Could you press the button, please, so that I see? Okay, Germany. I see Germany. Okay, that's it. I see Germany. Okay, well noted. Thank you. Oh, yeah. No, you're already on the L document. Yeah. I now invite the Commission to take action on draft resolution L4. I have been advised that the draft resolution contains no program budget implications. Mexico, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to ask for your forgiveness and the forgiveness of the members of the Commission. I wonder if we could suspend the meeting for a few minutes just so that we could read through this version which has just come before us. Just 2 minutes, sir, please, if there's no objection.
All right. I'm going to suspend the meeting for another 2 minutes to read the text. Thanks. Distinguished delegates, the 11th meeting of the Commission for Social Development is resumed. We are still giving time to the main sponsors of the youth resolution to check their version. In the meantime, I suggest to do the following with your indulgence. The main sponsors of the resolution L5, which reads Social Dimensions of the New Partnership for Africa's Development, have checked the English version of that text. And it seems to be in accordance with what was handed in. So I suggest that the Commission now do I have to read this whole thing? Now consider the draft resolution L5 on NEPAD in its English language version only, because this is the one where we feel, where it seems to that member states Okay, yeah. I feel that it is correct, but I hear we still have to distribute it. So what we're going to do, we're going to distribute the English language version of the NEPAD resolution to all of you. Once that is done, I ask you that we continue on the basis of the English language version only, with the firm promise from the Secretariat that they'll check and recheck all the other language versions so that in the aftermath they correspond exactly to what was agreed in the English version. So I will suspend the meeting again for a few minutes for the English version to be distributed. The meeting is resumed. Distinguished delegates, as announced before, I now invite the Commission to resume its consideration of Agenda Item 3 entitled Follow-up to the World Summit for Social Development and the 24th Special Session of the General Assembly, to hear the introduction of Draft Resolution E/CN5/2017/L5 entitled, I quote, Social Dimensions of the New Partnership for Africa's Development, unquote, submitted by Ecuador on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. As announced before, we will be working on the basis of the English draft only in order to be sure that we're working on the correct text. I now give the floor to the representative of Ecuador to introduce the draft resolution on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. You have the floor.
Chair. I have the honor to take the floor on behalf of the Group of 77 and China to introduce Draft Resolution E/CN5/2017/L5, which is a resolution traditionally submitted by the group entitled The Social Dimensions of the New Partnership for Africa's Development, or NEPAD. The text is an update of agreed language from the resolution with the same name adopted by consensus by the Commission in previous year and unfortunately voted on for adoption last year. The resolution continues to highlight the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as well as the pursuit of the objectives of the Agenda 2063 of the African Union in very critical and meaningful areas for the African continent. As a resolution that the group attaches paramount importance to, I would like to express, on behalf of the Group of 77 and China, our thanks for the commitment, constructive participation, flexibility, and hard work that went into preparing the draft resolution for the Commission's formal consideration today, allowing it to be adopted by consensus once again. We invite other member states to consider co-sponsoring this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank the distinguished representative of Ecuador. Does any other delegation not a member of the Group of 77 and China wish to co-sponsor the draft resolution? I see Turkey. I see Malawi, but you're okay, yeah. All right. Thank you. So Turkey will be added to the list of co-sponsors. I now invite the Commission to take action on Draft Resolution E/CN5/2017/L5 entitled Social Dimensions of the New Partnership for Africa's Development. I have been advised that the draft resolution contains no program budget implications. Does any delegation wish to make a statement in connection with the draft resolution before adoption? I give the floor to the United States.
Thank you, Chairman. This year, the United States joins consensus on this annual resolution focused on Africa's development. I especially want to thank the South African delegation for its hard work drafting and facilitating negotiations. We recognize the importance of this issue to our development partners, and for this reason, we hope our development partners will continue to improve the alignment of goals in the African Union's Agenda 2063 with the 2030 Agenda, with the aim of deepening coordination and coherence in the UN's work in an actionable and efficient way. Together, that way, we can achieve tangible results. So while we are joining consensus on this resolution, we do so with the following explanation. We note that the resolution calls on African governments to expand investment financing to agriculture to at least 10% of the annual budgets of their national public sectors. As understood during the negotiation of this resolution, the U.S. expects this action to occur in a manner consistent with international obligations for public sector financing of agriculture. Second, we further note the importance of trade in helping to ensure access to food for net food buyers. We also note that the resolution emphasizes the need to accelerate Africa's inclusive and sustainable industrialization by the adoption and implementation of specific measures and actions at the national, regional, and continental levels, and note that the United States expects any such measures and actions to occur in a manner consistent with international obligations. We reiterate that the United States' longstanding and well-known concerns regarding the topic of a right to development. This term does not have an internationally accepted meaning, and any related discussion needs to focus on aspects of development that relate to human rights, which are universal rights held and enjoyed by individuals, and which every individual may demand from his or her own government. Finally, we further note that this resolution used the word, quote, equitable in multiple contexts. While the United States fully endorses the importance of universal access to safe drinking water, sanitation, and education, for example, we must collectively avoid any unintended interpretation of the term equitable that implies a subjective assessment of fairness that, among other things, may lead to discriminatory practices. Again, we look forward to making more progress on resolutions such as this one in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank the distinguished representative of the United States. Does any other delegation wish to make a statement before adoption? I see none. May I take it that the Commission wishes to adopt draft resolution L5 on the basis of its English text and recommend it to the Economic and Social Council for its adoption? I hear no objection. It is so decided. Does any delegation wish to make a statement after the adoption of the draft resolution? South Africa, you have the floor.
Chair, the South Africa aligns itself with a statement delivered by Ecuador on behalf of Group 77 and China. The South African delegation wishes to express gratitude for the constructive manner in which delegations engage in these negotiations on social dimensions of the new Partnership for Africa's Development resolution. This resolution remains a priority for South Africa, the African continent, and the G77 and China, as it continues to be the blueprint for Africa's development towards the achievement of Agenda 2063 of the African Union, as well as the objectives of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Furthermore, South Africa wishes to strongly reiterate its commitment to addressing the challenges of poverty eradication and development in Africa by continuously advocating for, among others, improved market access, increased foreign direct investment, technology transfer, and debt relief in pursuit of the achievement of social development of women, youth, older persons, and people with disabilities. In this regard, the conclusion of the Doha round of negotiations of the World Trade Organization remains pivotal and a priority for our government. I thank you.
Thank the distinguished representative of South Africa for the statement. I see no other delegations requesting the floor. So we are now printing as announced, we're now printing the English version of L4 on youth, of the resolution, draft resolution L4 on youth, as it was handed in by the main sponsors. Once this is available, it will be distributed in the room, and we will resume consideration of that agenda item and of the draft resolution L4. The meeting is again suspended for a few minutes. Distinguished delegates, the meeting is resumed. I invite the Commission to turn its attention back to the draft resolution entitled Policies and Programs Involving Youth under agenda sub-item 3B. It has been distributed in the room in the form as it was sent to the Secretariat originally. And it will later be reissued again as document L4, reissued for technical reasons, and that, of course, will be done in all the languages. I'd like to give the floor again to Portugal to make a few remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for giving me the floor. And I would like, on behalf of the main sponsors of the resolution on policies and programs involving youth, the Republic of Moldova, Senegal, and my own delegation, as well as on behalf of the 56 co-sponsors of this resolution, to express our most profound dismay that the work of the Commission has been hindered by a technical mistake from the Secretariat. While we are all human beings and we understand that mistakes sometimes occur, the fact of the matter is that the version initially circulated amongst member states did not, and I repeat, did not correspond to the version sent to the Secretariat by the co-facilitators. Furthermore, the version initially circulated contained significant editorial liberties made without the consultation or with the assentment of the co-facilitators, which we also regret. Having this said, I would like to thank all member states for their patience and for their indulgence, and I would like my delegation's remarks to be registered in the official records of this meeting. I thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you very much. We've taken due note of the remarks, and of course they will be in the records of the meeting. As discussed before, and with the agreement of members, I now suggest that we take action on the draft resolution entitled Policies and Programs Involving Youth, as contained in the paper distributed in the room in the English language version. I have been advised that the draft contains no program budget implications. I would now like to ask whether any delegation wishes to make a statement in connection with the draft resolution before its adoption. South Africa, you have the floor.
Chairperson, the South African delegation wishes to thank the co-facilitators of this resolution for their constructive, transparent and inclusive process. South Africa places high priority to policies on the social development of youth, in particular education, job creation and health. In this regard, the current text adequately addresses a number of these priorities, with the inclusion of promotion and protection of rights of migrants and refugees. South Africa appreciates the inclusion of access to health services in the resolution. However, given the current climate where the international community seems to be regressing on the advancement of reproductive rights, a more comprehensive paragraph on health would have advanced youth's rights to health. It is now more critical than ever for member states to take a strong stance in line with the commitments made in 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Failing to do so may contribute to the defunding of key programs focusing on this area, which is guaranteed to have a negative impact on developing countries, especially as it will limit access to reproductive health care services for poor women, resulting in increased mortality rates and morbidities due to unsafe abortions and a rise in sexually transmitted diseases like HIV. South Africa will therefore continue to advocate for the advancement of reproductive rights of young people, as we believe in the critical link between a healthy population and overall development. I thank you.
Thank the distinguished representative of South Africa for a statement. Are there any other delegations who wish to make a statement before the adoption? I see none. May I take it then that the Commission wishes to adopt the draft resolution as distributed in the room and recommend it to the Economic and Social Council for its adoption? I hear no objection. It is so decided. Does any delegation wish to make a statement after the adoption of the draft resolution? I hear none. Oh, sorry. Mexico, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, sir. Mexico, with great pleasure, joins in the consensus that we have reached during these negotiations. And we'd like to congratulate the facilitators and the main co-sponsors of the text. Sir, we too would like to express our dismay with the manner in which L4 was presented originally. We do regret that the situation has occurred. It's really unacceptable in the kind of work that we're doing in the Commission, as in the United Nations in general. And therefore, we will continue to try to ensure that circumstances like the ones that we've just had to deal with this afternoon will not occur again. Thank you very much.
Thank the distinguished representative of Mexico for his statement. And I would also once again like to thank all delegations for their flexibility in working on 2 draft resolutions today only in their English language versions. We know that multilingualism is very important for us, and there are 6 languages, so I would like to thank every one of you for the extraordinary flexibility shown. I'll do this first. If I hear no other requests for the floor, I would just like to say that before we conclude our consideration of agenda item 3 as a whole, I should like to propose that we take note of the following documents that were before the Commission during the session and that have not been reflected in any of the draft resolutions adopted by the Commission. These are the report of the Secretary General on strategies for the eradication of poverty to achieve sustainable development for all, as contained in document E/CN5/2017/3. The report of the Secretary General on the 3rd review and appraisal of the Madrid International Plan of Action on Aging, preliminary assessment, as contained in document E/CN5/2017/6. And the note by the Secretariat entitled, I quote, Emerging Issues Promoting Integrated Policies for Poverty Eradication, Youth Development in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, unquote, as contained in document E/CN5/2017/7. If I hear no objections, the Commission will take note of the documents. It is so decided. The Commission has thus concluded its consideration of item 3 as a whole. I now invite the Commission to turn to agenda item 5 in order to consider its provisional agenda for the next session. The draft provisional agenda and documentation for the 56th session is contained in document E/CN5/2017/L1 before you. Are there any comments on the draft provisional agenda? I see none. May I take it then that the Commission wishes to adopt the draft provisional agenda and documentation for its 56th session as contained in document E/CN5/2017/L1? I hear no objection. It is so decided. The Commission has thus concluded its consideration of agenda item 5. Distinguished delegates, we have come to the last item on our agenda, the adoption of the report of the Commission on its 55th session. I give the floor to our distinguished Vice Chair and Rapporteur, Ms. Anna Sandoval from Paraguay, to introduce the draft report contained in document E/CN5/2017/L2 before you. Ms. Sandoval, you have the floor.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, it's a great privilege and an honor for me to introduce to you the draft resolution on the report of the Commission for Social Development, its 55th session. In this connection, the Commission has before it document E/CN.5/2017-L2, which contains a summary of the organization of our session. In the final report, there's also reflected the measures that have been adopted by the Commission in connection with every item on our agenda, together with the text of all resolutions and decisions adopted by the Commission today. As regards Section B, on attendance. I'd like to point out that the official list of participating delegations at this session will be published in document E/CN5/2017/INF/1. The provisional list of participants has been distributed by PaperSmart, and you can also consult this in the website of the Commission. I'd like to ask delegations to consider the information that appears in the list of participants, and please communicate any necessary changes to the Secretariat. I'd also like to take this opportunity to remind delegations who haven't yet done so to present to the Secretariat by the latest, the February 17th, the names of delegations who should be included on the list. Before concluding, on behalf of the Bureau of the Commission, I'd like to express our profound thanks to each and every coordinator, facilitator, and negotiator who have worked very hard during the negotiations on the resolutions of the Commission. I'd also like to give my thanks to all delegations for the constructive participation and cooperation as we've achieved a consensus on all the draft resolutions. And at the same time, I'd like to give thanks especially to our distinguished President, Mr. Philip Charworth of Austria, and the Vice Presidents, Ambassador Lot Zonze of Malawi, Madam Elizabeth David of Romania, and Madam Alaoun Altamini of Qatar for the extraordinary collaboration that they've shown and the team spirit that they've shown in the course of the session of the Commission. I'd also like to express thanks to the Secretariat of the Commission and to thank them for the assistance and support that they have always given to each and every member of the Bureau. Having said this, Mr. President, I'd like to put this draft resolution to the Commission for approval. Thank you very much.
I thank our rapporteur for her statement. Are there any comments on the draft report? May I take it then that the Commission wishes to adopt the draft report as contained in document E/CN5/2017/L2 and agrees to entrust the rapporteur with finalizing the report, including by reflecting the proceedings of our final meeting today? I hear no objection. It is so decided. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, after 1.5 weeks of engaging and fruitful discussions, we have reached the end of the 55th session of the Commission for Social Development. During this session, we heard from numerous high-level representatives about what their governments or organizations are doing in order to ensure that all social groups are included in the development of their respective countries and that in their endeavor to eradicate poverty in all its forms, truly no one is left behind. There are many good examples of what works in very different situations, and there are lessons learned about what not to do. I personally found in particular the 3 panel discussions very rich and thought-provoking. I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank all the participants in the general debate and the panel discussions, the panelists, and the moderators for their valuable contributions. We talked, among other things, about the concepts of relative versus absolute poverty and how we need to devote special attention to those at the very bottom of society. We discussed that in order for economic growth to be turned into pro-poor growth and to lead to social development, forceful policy interventions are necessary. Many speakers underscored the lack of adequate data and the need to shore up our efforts to gather disaggregated data for informed policy choices. It was underlined that the concern for social groups needs to be mainstreamed into all policy frameworks. Means for ensuring this mainstreaming, such as a youth check of all envisioned legislative measures, were mentioned. Whatever we do in this field needs to not only take the views of those concerned into account, but also needs to actively involve them in decision-making, nothing about us without us. Numerous times, it was highlighted that while direct financial handouts are often necessary, the ultimate goal of social policies should be empowerment. And whatever we do needs to be firmly based on the concept of human dignity. Finally, questions were raised to what extent the UN system itself gave the mainstreaming of the concerns of social groups the required attention. In the light of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, we will need to find effective answers in order to ensure truly inclusive development that leaves no one behind. Based on my relatively short experience as chair of this commission, I wonder, however, whether the Commission could not do even better in feeding this rich input into the broader work of the UN, and how we can best make use of the abundance of information, experience, and lessons learned for effective policy guidance. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, the Commission aligned its priority theme for its 2017-18 cycle with the main theme of ECOSOC's 2017 session. The outcome of the 55th session consists of 3 resolutions on subtopics, and there are going to be chair's summaries of the panel discussions. However, I believe that we could have acquired more consolidated policy guidance on poverty reduction through social development. Furthermore, in 2018, the main theme of ECOSOC will be from global to local, supporting sustainable and resilient societies in urban and rural communities. It is not obvious to me how the Commission's unchanged biannual priority theme can adequately respond to this challenge, and thus I believe that as members of the Commission we should continue to reflect on ways how we can better align the work of the CSocD with that of the ECOSOC and the HLPF. I'm convinced that the more specific the topics the Commission deals with are, the more interest they will solicit among Member States, especially in capitals. This could help Member States decide on more tailored participation from capitals, where many different ministries follow the work of the Commission, in turn leading to more tailored outcomes, which could effectively highlight the perspective of social development in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and beyond. In my view, at the end of the day, it boils down to the question of what Member States want to achieve through the Commission. We all need to take ownership of the Commission and try to contribute actively to the work of the ECOSOC and the HLPF, in line with their respective agendas and mandates, rather than engage in recurrent patterns. The work of the Commission needs to be concrete and up-to-date and should not shy away from experimenting with new formats. The most recent policy documents should be the main framework for action. After all, we want to influence the implementation of the current generation of policies. Maybe the Commission should even adopt one-off resolutions in order to stay relevant and up-to-date. One thing, however, should not change, and I believe this is the constructive atmosphere which the Commission should be proud of. I thus want to use this opportunity to thank all of you again for your constructive engagement and attitude during the past couple of weeks, and as evidenced again today in a special situation. This makes the work as chair of the Commission a very pleasant one. Distinguished delegates, it has been an honor and a privilege to be your chair during this 55th session of the Commission for Social Development. I leave the Commission with the firm conviction that there's still a lot of work to be done in order to ensure that questions of social development are adequately addressed in the course of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, both at the national and international levels. I'm convinced that Member States will show the necessary leadership and flexibility in order to ensure that the Commission can adapt its working methods and can continue to play its role in this endeavour. For my part, I pledge to continue to be available to guide the work of the Bureau in the period up to the selection of another representative from a WEOC member state as chair of the 56th session of the Commission for Social Development. I would like to use this opportunity to thank the Secretariat for their continuous support to me and the other members of the Bureau, in particular Ms. Sangeeta Sharma from DG ACM as the Secretary of the Commission, and Ms. Daniela Baz and her colleagues at UNDESA, who were involved in the preparations of the substantive work of the Commission. A special word of thanks also goes to my wonderful fellow Bureau members, His Excellency Mr. Lotzonzi of Malawi, Ms. Elisabetta Dawit of Romania, Ms. Ana Sandoval Espinola of Paraguay, and Ms. Alanut Altemimi of Qatar. It has been a real pleasure working with you. Finally, I would like to thank all of you distinguished delegates for your support and cooperation, and I kindly ask you to extend your full support also to the Bureau of the 56th session of the Commission for Social Development. I thank you all very much. Distinguished delegates, the first meeting of the 56th session will be convened immediately following the closure of this session. There being no other order of business, I declare closed the 55th session of the Commission for Social Development.